Well, the film's called Kuru, the Science and the Sorcery, and it's a medical detective story, a history of science program that follows the unravelling of the mystery of the disease. It's placed in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, and the film tries to balance the Western medical model or understanding of the disease and the local people, the foray's cultural understanding of the disease, because they believe that it's caused by sorcery. So the film looks at both their cultural beliefs and their cultural practices and the medical detective story. There's a lot of archive in the film, almost half of the film, there's 26 minutes of archive. And we always knew there was some archive that existed, but we hadn't seen much of it because it was based in America. And we'd started our filming back in 2003, 2004. And we were very fortunate because it was in 2008 when we finally got funding for the film. The film archive got relocated from a museum in America into Perth, which is the city that I live in Western Australia. So all of a sudden we had direct access to all of this material. But we had to go through a really unique process to actually gain permission to use the footage, because even though Michael Alpers is looking after the film, the Melanesian Archive in Perth, Western Australia, it was really important that we actually got the permission from the subjects, from the people in the film back in Papua New Guinea. So when we completed rough cut stage, we're about 80% of the way complete through the edit, we took the project back to the Highlands and showed it to a group of elders that came from a whole lot of villages to gain their permission for us to actually use the material. Yeah, it was probably close to 10 years in the making. I first stumbled across the idea in 2001, and that's when I did my first trip to Papua New Guinea to see if the foray would actually allow us to come and record their stories and to participate in the telling of the film. And we found it really hard to get an Australian broadcaster involved. And the way that funding works in Australia is that you have to have an Australian broadcaster on board for the funding agencies to give you money. So we had strong international interest, but we couldn't get any Australian finance until we got the Australian broadcasters. And we tried repeatedly over many years to get the money, and we couldn't. So we raised our own money and got some round the world tickets and went and filmed it in 2003, the bulk of it. And then we came back to Australia and tried to get the sale, and nobody wanted to buy the film because it's history, science and anthropology, and the broadcasters like just science or just history. So it was actually a very difficult film to market or find a marketplace for it. And then we were just fortunate that the new funding round came up in Australia for new directors, and they didn't have to have a broadcaster attached, and they put up development funding, and that was enough money to finally get one of the Australian broadcasters interested, because they didn't have to put much money into the project. Yeah, so it was finally in 2008 when we got our commission from SBS. I personally didn't go, but it was only in September last year that Ben Alpers, who we did the filming together in Papua New Guinea, he took the film back to the village in Waisa, where much of the filming was done, and showed the film 3 or 4 times over 4 nights up there, and people came from lots of villages to come and watch the film. So it was very important for us as part of the process in making the film that we actually took the film back there, because we knew it was important not only just to get their permission, but they got to see the product as well. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's a wonderful festival to be a part of, and it was very important for me to enter the film into FIFO, because I think a lot of media misrepresents parts of the Pacific region, and I know that in Australia, Papua New Guinea doesn't get fantastic representation. And I think there's a lot of positive messages that we tried to make in our film about that particular region. And so it's really I feel privileged that the film was accepted into FIFO so people in the Pacific can actually see it, and it's great to have it recognised by the Pacific region.